Hey everybody, so today I'm going to talk about all the different ways of looking at financing a $1.5 million North Vancouver home. And I'm going to do a bunch of assumptions as I go through this just to make the comparisons easier. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to probably start with like one of the major big banks. So first of all, one thing I would say is that we can't do less than 20% down on this property because it's over $1 million. So we always need 20% no matter wherever we're going to start. So maybe I'll start with Scotiabank. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the qualification numbers, especially after January 1st, of how Scotiabank is going to look at this. So the qualifying rate is going to be the benchmark. So I'm going to put 4.99. Amortization is going to be 30 years or 360 months. Assuming the credit is good, above 680, we're going to do 44 GDS, 44 TDS. So what that means is we're allowed to use 44% of our incomes to deal with this debt. Rental offset, they will do about 50% on owning other rental properties, and they'll use 50% of that income. And basement suite income, which is actually probably the most important one in this scenario, they only credit 20. So now I can do this income comparison here, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at the properties themselves. So if this guy wanted to buy this one property by itself, so add subject principal, so just call it North Van House. Let's assume he's got the 20% down, so the maximum mortgage is going to be $1.2 million. Rental income in the property at this time is going to be zero. Heat, they're going to probably going to want about $150 heat payment. Taxes, I'm going to assume are like $5,500 minus, I'm going to say about $420 a month net. So what this means is there's a $7,000 a month payment that has to be dealt with. Now, when we actually put this into income numbers, this $7,000 a month equals $191,000 of your personal income. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this worksheet, and I'm going to call this credit union. So what happens at a credit union? So the credit unions are actually not going to be changing their rules. Or they have the option of not to. So we can actually qualify under the old rules. So we can do 3.69, and rental offset jumps to, what lender am I going to do? 75, and then we're going to do 85 for the basement suite. And this is sort of a very specific thing. You don't have to worry about the 39.44, just a little bit less income that we can actually use. So if we just did this credit union, just one that I know, and we came here, then the income difference is 187,000 versus 191. So it's actually not that big of a deal or big of a difference. Where everything gets radically different is if this $1.5 million North Vancouver home had a 2-bedroom basement suite that rented for $1,900 a month, everything becomes dramatically different. So let me show you. I'm just going to copy this again, and I'm going to call it Scotiabank plus rental. So, or plus basement suite. So if I were to go to the basement suite, we know that Scotia only allows 20% usage of it. So when I put, we've got rental income here of $1,900, it drops it to $180,000. So you still need $180,000 worth of income to qualify for this. So the old one at Scotiabank needed 191, and now Scotiabank basement suite needed 180. So not that big of a difference. Where it gets interesting is actually with this credit union. So when I add a copy sheet here, and I go credit union plus basement suite, and now I'm using 75% or 85% rental income. That's 4 times more power of using a credit union when it comes to basement suite income. I can now put this $1,900 in here. And now the income required to qualify for this is $137,000. This is why you'll find a lot of credit union financing happening in North Vancouver, West Vancouver. I mean, literally now it's everywhere. But this is sort of the power of the credit union. They're able to reduce the income requirements dramatically. So if I go credit union basement suite versus credit union, it's 187 to 137. So that's the power of a basement suite. So now, is there other ways of buying this? And the answer is yes. Technically, you can buy this property as a rental if you wanted to. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually use Scotiabank basement suites. I got to think through this. I'm going to compare this, just show you guys. So I'm going to copy this, and it's going to change a little bit here. So now we're dealing with, so I'm going to talk about what it requires for the property itself to qualify. This is going to get a little bit more confusing because you're going to have to qualify for whatever amount that rental is if there's a negative amount in it, and then you still have to deal with where you live. So let me just do this here. Sort of doing this on the fly. So the subject property income. So no, it's no longer a what's it called? It's no longer a subject principal residence. It's actually a rental. So what I'm just going to do is write this down here quickly. North Vancouver, North Van house, max mortgage, 1.2 million. Now I'm just doing the comparison on the mortgage side. Reality is you would need 25% down for this one specifically, but I'm just showing you the math. Now the rental income changes here dramatically because we're not just dealing with the $1,900 a month rental income for the basement suite. We can also deal with the rental income inside of the home. So if it's renting for $1,900 there, we can probably get $2,500 on top. So this property probably rents for $4,400. And now heat goes away, strata, and we still have the 420. Now this is at Scotia. So Scotia, so if you bought this as a rental, you still have to come up with $126,000 income by itself. So if you lived in another property, so let's say for example you lived at your principal residence home. Actually, I got to delete this one here, and I'm going to do add a non-subject principal. So let's say you live somewhere home. Let's say you live somewhere else, and you lived in a place where you had an $800,000 mortgage on it. So let's see. So this is principal res. And the rental income, let's say it's 0. The mortgage payment is $3,000. Your taxes are $400. So here, if you bought this thing as this is very dependent, as you see, on the principal residence itself. Like how much of a mortgage do you have here? If it's like this in this structure, you still have to have $90,000 here. You have to qualify for that, and $126,000. So your total required income in this specific scenario to buy this North Van as a rental is $220,000, assuming you have this principal residence mortgage financing already structured here. Now, where it gets very interesting or very good is actually with credit unions. So remember, we're dealing with a Scotiabank plus. Okay, let's get rid of the basement suite. Just do plus rental. So now we're basically doing a Scotiabank rental plus principal residence. Hopefully I'm spelling that right. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy this because it's mostly pre-filled and show what would a credit union look at. So in this scenario, if you're buying this as a rental, you need $220,000 worth of income. Okay, but at a credit union, what do we need? Oops. Delete that one. I'm going to copy worksheet. So now I'm going to do credit union rental plus principal residence. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to change these numbers, 3.69, 30 years. I'm going to do 39 GDS, even though we can go a little bit higher sometimes. Now the rental offset is going to go to 75, and the basement suite is going to go to 85. So the income required here for the North Vancouver house is $81,000, and your principal residence is $92,000. So the principal residence amount didn't really change much, but the North Vancouver home did. It went from 81,000. So now we need a combined income of $173,000 to qualify. But so that's versus 219. So that's over 48 grand difference. And this is where it gets really, really good. What happens if we get a credit union to finance? If you notice here, rental offsets 75% and basement suites offsets 85%. What happens if we copy this worksheet and did credit union plus principal residence, and inside of that residence, it had a basement suite. Let's say the suite was rented for $1,600 a month. So now I'm going to scroll down here and just change the numbers. I'm going to add $1,600 a month right here. And now that dropped to 55 grand. So now this person needs $130,000 worth of income to qualify for 1.2 plus about $2 million worth of mortgage in this specific scenario. So now, is there any extreme scenarios that we can actually study here? And there is. Now, this is really a one-off, but if you're curious about it, technically, a lot of parents have big houses and have huge mortgages. One of the ways to, and the problem with that is that they have to qualify. If they try to get another mortgage at a different lender and they try to qualify with that huge mortgage that they have, they automatically get denied. But one of the ways to really relook at it is if they have a successful person living at home, making 70, 80, 90 grand a year, which, believe it or not, actually happens, once in a while. Technically, that kid could buy this property if he had the down payment for it. So I'll just show you the extremes of this. So let's just do credit union, basement suite. So credit union rental. Okay, let's just copy this and I'll just re-edit it. So it's going to be credit union rental and lives at home. 3.69, 360. That's fine. That's fine. And now I'm going to be able to use the $4,400 worth of income here. He lives at home, so he doesn't really pay anything. So some lenders will require a $600 a month house fee that you have to pay, which gets factored into these numbers. But I do know of a lender that doesn't. So I'm just going to delete this. So this North Vancouver property in this exact scenario is creating $81,000 worth of income that's required. So theoretically, if someone lived at home, successful person lives at home and makes 90 grand a year, he could qualify to buy this property as a rental. Now, is there more? Yeah, there is more. You would only ever go to it if all your ratios are sort of maximized. But technically, if you can actually put commercial financing on residential properties, that's something that's sort of, I would say, higher level, and we're getting into that level. That usually means you own a lot of property. But in theory, if you have an operating company, it can provide a guarantee, and you could put commercial financing on, say, for example, a North Vancouver home if it's required. The rate's a little bit higher, but if you wanted to get that property, it's definitely possible. So those are sort of all the variations that can happen in buying properties. So this is sort of behind the scenes type work that you actually never really get to see. So I thought I might show it to you guys all, and hopefully that helps sort of explain what I do for a living, for lack of better terms.